Good morning, it's Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself, and today we're going to talk about the emotion or the feeling of disgust. What it is, why it's there, what it's protecting us from. It's there to protect you, to keep you safe, to keep you out of danger, and to help you from sliding down into hopelessness and despair. Some deeper emotions. Okay, so let's get into it and let's talk about disgust. Disgust is often described as a sensation or a feeling. It's sort of creepy in your body. It's gross, right? You have this feeling that washes over you. For those of you who have ever had a primal disgust feeling, it can cause serious physical, biological reactions when we have this emotion of disgust. It causes gag reflexes to food. It causes us to vomit, to throw up. It can cause us to freeze and pass out, lose consciousness. Disgust can make us scream. It can make us run. It can make us turn away. So disgust is a very powerful emotion, often there to warn us, to self-protect us against something that innately feels dangerous. Phobias are a great example of a protective mechanism, the feeling and the emotion of disgust rising when you have a phobia to, say, spiders. A lot of times people feel this feeling of disgust or a certain medical phobia. I suffered from medical phobias for years. So blood or body parts or things of this nature that accidents people turn away from in disgust. Needles, right? Because it's very primal, right? Blood and the loss of blood back in the day would signify death, and so our body protects us from that by passing out, by feeling this overwhelming feeling of grossness, disgust, and the need to get away from it, to turn away and to stop the experience. So again, disgust you will see in many different anxiety, phobia, OCD type disorders. You will also find the feeling of disgust a lot in dissociative orders, where people dissociate, right? Disgust leads a lot to this. Disgust is in a lot of food aversions, so a lot of gag reflexes. Biologically, you're programmed to barf, vomit, get rid of poisonous foods. And so this is a self-protection mechanism at its core, biologically, to have a gag reflex to anything that seems disgusting, because ultimately our survival and our biological survival depended on us not eating poisonous foods, etc. So we developed this gag reflex, this disgust, this feeling of disgust. And ultimately, I want to talk about shame here. Okay, shame and helplessness are one of the lowest vibrational energies that a person can feel for your health and for your survival. And so disgust is really a self-protection mechanism, much like anger, that comes higher up. It comes much higher up in a form that you will listen to, that is very startling and that's apparent, and that saves you from feeling these deeper emotions. So it tries to protect you earlier on than having to slide all the way down to complete helplessness, hopelessness, and shame, which is what I want to talk to you about. Disgust can also come in the form of witnessing behavior that we don't like. We're disgusted when we see somebody react in anger or violence. We feel disgust for them, right? Disgust for ourselves, for having done something that's embarrassing, right? Where we could be judged or criticized or abandoned. So there's a lot of also the feeling, the emotion of disgust, like that was so disgusting, that act, that emotion was disgusting, right? We have an aversion to it, an aversion to watching violent acts, to seeing somebody react in anger or doing something gross, whatever it is, and we feel disgusted by that person. or by that behavior. So disgust is there to protect us from many forms, right? It's a self-protection mechanism against many forms. You will also see this disgust when we have an aversion to bugs, creepy crawlies, spiders, right? A lot of people have this disgust for them. Well, we know biologically in the past, these bugs, some of them were very poisonous and could kill us, and this is where this disgust feeling comes in as a protection mechanism, and we're supposed to be wanting to turn away from these things because some of them could have been dangerous to us in our biological past. The other thing that we have disgust over is dead bodies. A dead animal on the side of the road, roadkill, right? A dead bird, a dead mouse, a dead raccoon, a dead bunny rabbit, a dead body, a dead person, even somebody we loved. We have this primal fear of dead bodies. It's an aversion to get away from them. I think biologically in the past, they would have carried, as they decomposed, diseases, and they would have had certain bacteria that started to form and crawl, and we just biologically knew that we couldn't stay with the dead, right? Get away from them, bury them, burn them, because otherwise the bacteria that from the organisms that are decomposing the humans could be harmful, right, for our health. And so this is again a biological, even though we loved or may have loved this thing, it's still, we feel this repulsion, this deep disgust. And again, it's a primal biological feeling to warn us of dangers that could come with being around dead bodies, blood, rotting things, bacteria. Even the smell produces disgust. A lot of smells will produce disgust in us if it's off-putting, if it smells like flesh or anything rotting. Again, these are to put us off of growing bacteria that could form, and we could get diseases of any kind, bacterial infections, food poisoning, whatever it is. So smell aversions often cause the feeling and the emotion of disgust. Okay, so all that to say, when we feel the feeling or the emotion of disgust and we feel repulsion, we feel a need to turn away. Sometimes our body overreacts and we go into complete fear mode. We may panic, have a panic attack. We may pass out. We may vomit, right? These are primal biological functions. They're imprints that have been biologically formed over millions of years to program us, to help us survive as a human being and as a species. So, what does that have to do with healing? Okay, when we feel deep sense of shame in our being, or a deep sense of hopelessness or helplessness, all three are totally different emotions, but they're one of the worst emotions. If you haven't seen my video on either helplessness, hopelessness, or shame, please go watch those. But we are at the root always when we're dealing with trauma or deep, long-lasting chronic pain or chronic illnesses. We're always dealing with a broken nervous system. We're dealing with an overreactive, ongoing fight or flight system with the central nervous system that cannot calm down. And when we're dealing with deep trauma, we're dealing with things like shame, helplessness, and hopelessness, and despair. And the self-judgment and the self-criticism that we give ourselves, we feel like we are that dead roadkill. We feel like we are the blood. We feel like we are disgusting and bad ourselves, right? So we feel shunned. We feel like people would want to turn away from us the way we feel that we want to turn away and avert ourselves from things that we are disgusted by. we feel like that thing that people are disgusted by and embarrassed by. We feel like an embarrassment. We feel the shame for just being alive. And when we're dealing with this trauma, we feel that people abandon us and turn away from us. When we're talking about shame, because we feel so deeply bad, wrong, guilty, we feel gross, we feel like we're damaged goods, we feel like we are a rotting corpse, we feel like we are the embarrassment, we are the thing that people are repulsed by and need to turn away from. We often self-protect by cutting ourselves off first from other people. We often end up knowing or sensing that we are going to be abandoned and turned away from, so we do it first. We, as a way to self-protect, turn away and isolate. So this COVID that's going around is a really good example, right? If a child in the school system gets COVID and they have to self-isolate, they feel like they are the disgusting thing that everybody is literally afraid of, and now other people are self-isolating against them. Anyone who's been in contact with them now must self-isolate, and it's almost like a real form of you have the cooties playing out. And we, as children, know this. We sense this deep shame. We are bad. We are wrong. We have the cooties. No one wants to be with us. Or disgusting. That's what shame feels like. And so disgust is really the emotion that hits us, that's like our jumping off point to actually going down into deep shame. So if we don't deal with it, then from disgust we go down into this deep sense of shame that we feel. But that is also the jumping off point from where we can do the work from healing the shame. So it's also just like it is the jumping off point for slipping down into shame, it's also disgust is the jumping off point for getting in and healing the shame. It's the call to action to do the work now to heal the deeper feeling and emotion underneath the disgust, which is the shame. Similarly for helplessness, a lot of times when we're dealing with phobias or fears and people passing out, losing consciousness, right? The blood draining, their face going pale. These are reactions to deep fear of death, and a self-protection mechanism of feeling like you are trapped and you're frozen. So this is where we talk about the fight or flight system. Right? This disgust, this deep disgust that we have is the jumping off point. If it's not heated, we will go down into a deep helplessness, which includes the face draining, which includes literally going white as a ghost, sometimes passing out, losing consciousness. So, and that's because we feel trapped and we feel completely helpless, right? We're frozen to do anything against the danger that we sense. So again, if you haven't seen my video on helplessness, you can go watch that. But we are talking about primal things here. So when we feel that feeling, if we don't heed it, we'll go down that road and we can go all the way down into complete and utter freeze state and a helplessness and feeling trapped with no way out, and our body's biological functions will take over. We'll just pass us right out into consciousness. That's what a deep phobia will do. The feeling of disgust is usually a call to do the deeper work. Okay, so we can do the deeper work of the helpless feeling. We can do the deeper work of the shame we feel. We can do the deeper work of the fear, right? The fear, the embarrassment, right? That helpless, hopeless shame. That's really what, in any respect, this feeling of disgust, this repulsion that comes up and floods our body is warning us, is warning us against the danger that we may see or feel, right? It's the food, it's the smell of the rotting corpse, it's whatever it is, but it's really underneath that more. It's our own feelings of inadequacy, our own feelings of helplessness, and our own feelings of deep shame, all coming from trauma, all coming from patterns, all coming from a broken central nervous system, and all coming from the feeling that we are broken, helpless, and not good enough, not capable, and these are the things that we need to heal. So children learn to feel this disgust at an early age. When somebody, picks their nose, everyone looks at them, ooh, that's disgusting, it's disgusting, right? Bodily fluids, farting, right? If somebody poos their pants, or if somebody would, these are all biological, necessary things to feel disgust about, because we know that this sharing of picking your nose and bodily fluids, we know that this is where colds, right, get transferred. We know that, you would never want your child to walk and pick up a piece of dog poo on the side of the road and sniff it or taste it or eat it, right? We need that feeling of disgust or repulsion to stop us from getting sick, right? Transferring disease, transferring colds, transferring flus, transferring bacteria. So, it's a lot of times people are pointed at and say, you're disgusting, ew. But then there's a sense of shame that comes along with that, right? A child picks his nose and is shunned by his friends now for years. You're disgusting, you're gross, right? And the child feels a deep sense of shame attached to that. So it's the deeper sense and the emotion of shame that we must heal, because we feel like we're the thing. We are the bacteria. We are the rotting corpse. We are the disgust. We are the thing that's going to cause somebody else to get sick and die. We are the cootie, right? So this is what shame feels like, that people want to get away from, and that you need to shun yourself from these people so that you don't have to feel that embarrassment or that shame, because you feel like they are going to point out that you are bad, you are wrong, you are disgusting, and you want to protect yourself from that before somebody else makes you feel that way. You feel the need. Just as animals will go off and die alone, they feel the need. Everybody feels the need to protect the rest of society. Biologically, we're programmed to do this, right? People know that when they're sick, they want to hole off, they want to self-isolate. They don't want anyone else to get it, because they don't want to be blamed. They don't want to feel that shame that comes along with the stigma of having given somebody else the cold, or given somebody else COVID. Even right now, this is a very good example going on in our time. We don't want to feel the responsibility, right? And the judgment and the criticism of the rest of the world. And so the reason why disgust is such a visceral, yucky, gross, right, feeling, it's a big emotion. It's a huge emotion, disgust, and it washes over us and sort of goes right into our cellular system. We can feel that disgust wash over us as we have this aversion to turn away. And what we need to do as a starting point to heal the deeper stuff, like victimhood and helplessness and deep shame, is we need to be able to sit with the intensity of our deep, biggest feelings and emotions as they wash over us. Because when we run, when we turn away, and when we freeze, we ultimately trap those feelings deeper inside us. So big feelings, intense feelings, they're just feelings. They come from the past. They have a reason. They're biologically forged from millions of years of evolution, but they're always not right in today's day and age. And we're not at risk, we're not at a threat from these big emotions that wipe and come over us now. And we need to learn to feel them in the right context. If they really aren't life-threatening, then we need to be able to sit with them, right? If it's life-threatening, yes, then we want that feeling to wash over us and to allow us to take an action that will make us survive, that will keep us surviving and keep us alive and keep us safe. But most of these big emotions, aren't that anymore. And so we need to learn how to feel them. It's okay to feel them. And when we push them down, when we turn them away, when we suppress them, when we repress our big feelings, this is when we start to feel these bigger feelings of shame, helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness. And this is the work that we need to do in order to heal chronic conditions, whether they're physical, mental, or emotional. So now that you can see that disgust is a real biological necessity for us in past history in order for us to evolve as a species, we can see that, having the smell or the look of something turn us off, right? Of rotten meat or spoiled milk or disgusting reptile, poisonous reptile or whatever, we turn away from. Blood, a whole bunch of loss of blood, right? So there's things that we just have an aversion to, even at the sight or smell of them. And this is normal, right? We don't want to see people picking their nose or blowing their nose and having the stuff spray everywhere, because we biologically know this could get us sick, or eating the rotten meat could get us poisoned, food poisoning, right? So we just know this at a biological level. It's not something we even think about. It's built into our biology. The problem with that is, say you get a cold that lasts 5 days. You feel icky. Other people look at you like you're icky. You self-isolate. They stay away from you. You get better, and all is well. Everything goes back to normal. Now, when we have chronic conditions that are not short-lived physical viruses or something like this, like when it's a pain condition, or we're in a wheelchair for multiple sclerosis, or we have cancer, or we have Parkinson's, right? We ultimately turn away from people with Parkinson's, and we're watching them shake because we're scared and we feel an aversion, right? We feel that same disgust, and it's because we don't want to catch these things. We don't want to eat the bad, rotten meat or milk. We don't want to, have that poisonous thing or catch anything that could be contagious. This is why we have these aversions. But when we're talking about chronic pain conditions, an anxiety condition, depression, an emotional condition, or a physical condition that's not contagious, like MS or Parkinson's or an autoimmune condition, we feel that same shame within ourselves, the need to isolate. People look at us and we feel that they're judging us and wanting to get away from us, that they look at us with aversion and disgust. So it can be very, very isolating to live with chronic illness, right? Because this is biologically programmed and we don't understand it. We feel as though we're being abandoned. We feel as though people are turning away from us. Maybe they look at us differently. They criticize us. They judge us. They have an aversion to us. They don't want to be around us. They don't invite us to things. They're kind of disgusted by us. They're embarrassed by us. They don't really feel like being our friends anymore. And this is all perceived, but it's also real. So we sense that realness. Other people don't mean to do it, but a lot of it comes off, right? It's biological. And they inadvertently send these messages. We are talking to ourselves. We are doing a lot of self-criticism, self-judgment, self-isolating, self-abandoning and withdrawing, right? So we are really acutely aware of the shame, the deep shame that we feel, but we can't put a word, like a pinpoint to it. So when we feel disgust, we know we just want to turn away. But when we feel shame, we feel like we're bad and people are turning away from us. Like we are the thing. We are that disease that people want to turn away from us. And this is where we really need to put our energy, right? When we either are feeling disgust towards something else, or when we're feeling like we are being abandoned or shamed or guilty, or somehow we are bad, or we're experiencing the trauma, we're wrong, and therefore we need to look closer at shame. Same goes with fear. We might be so overcome with fear, and we need to do the work on that deep inner work on feeling helpless, Like, why are we frozen? We're frozen in time. We feel trapped. We feel like we have no power. We're powerless. So disgust is a big emotion that comes from fear that we won't survive, and it produces deep shame in people. So this is a feeling and an emotion built out of fear and shame. Built out of fear, and it produces shame. And so we really need to do this work. So I hope that you will take this to heart. I hope that you've learned something. I hope that it's pointed you in the right direction and you understand a little bit more about what disgust is and where it comes from and why we have it. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so now. And I will see you in the next video.